Okay, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah to you all. I hope you're all well, inshallah. So welcome to this week's session on Introduction to Islamic Economics. My sincere apologies for last week. We had a bit of a technical issue, so unfortunately we weren't able to cover last week. So what I'll do this week, inshallah, we'll cover two sessions. We'll cover last week's session on money and finance, and then we'll also cover what would have been week 4, which is Islam and taxation. There isn't that much really to talk about when it comes to Islam and taxation, so we can cover both, inshallah. So it means we're on schedule on the outline that I sent out originally. So just a bit of a recap. We covered the introduction to Islamic economics, if you remember, on week 1. If I can find the slide, inshallah. Yeah, we covered an introduction to Islamic economics, and what we did is we completed this, which was really a comparison of both systems. So we really just had a look at a very basic level: how does Islam view the human? How does capitalism view the human? How do both systems look at the economic problem? And then we had a look at how Islamic economics addresses this. Then, brothers and sisters, hopefully you remember, we had a look at Islam and ownership. And as I've mentioned previously, ownership is probably the central feature of Islamic economics, because ownership and the disposal of ownership is how goods move, how you acquire wealth, and how wealth circulates. So if you remember, we covered the different ways you can earn wealth, the means you can acquire wealth, and then we went through each of these, inshallah. So today we will move on, inshallah, and we'll look at two things. We'll have a look at money and finance, inshallah, and then what we'll do is we'll have a look at Islam and taxation at the end, well, near the end as well, inshallah. So what we'll do, brothers and sisters, like previously, if you've got any questions or any comments, feel free to put them on the chat. And then what we do is, once I've covered the presentation, we can then have an open conversation. If you want, you can take the mic and ask any questions or make any comments or points, inshallah, and we can take it from there. So I actually, brothers and sisters, want to begin with a poll, and I'm hoping it actually works, because I did prepare it earlier. Just bear me a second. Let me find this poll. Just bear with me, brothers and sisters. Let me find this poll for you. Okay, we can come to the poll, inshallah, a bit later. It was actually for a bit later. I wanted your views actually on something. Okay, so when we're looking at money and finance, brothers and sisters, this can be quite a complex, convoluted subject, and it actually isn't. Many people have made it as such. So even when it comes to capitalist economics, what you find, many people feel it's a very complex, very deep subject, very hard to understand. And if anyone's ever studied economics, firstly, you don't cover much about money. And then secondly, even if you study finance, very little of the existing system is outlined for you. There's a lot of theories about money, about finance. And I think probably the best place to start is, why is money important? Why do we even need money in an economy? And then we can have a look at how Islam view of these sort of things as well, inshallah. So if you think about it, brothers and sisters, how can a society function? We need to eat, we need homes to live in, we need jobs to earn money, we need houses that we also need to live in. So what you find is people will do different things in every society. No society has everyone doing the same thing. So some people catch the fish that we eat. Some people work in construction, they make the houses we live in. Some people make the transport, they make the roads, they make the vehicles that allow us to travel. We can't all cook everything, so different people can cook different things. Now, in order for all of these goods and services to go from those people who make it to get to those people who need it, we need some sort of way for this to actually happen. Now, we can do barter, where I sell you something that you need and you sell me something that I need. And in fact, for a lot of history, that's actually what happened. I will sell you fish or meat, and in return, you will give me wood, you'll give me something else. Now, naturally, this creates a problem because I may not have something that you need, or you may have something that I don't need, or you may have something that I do need. However, what I have isn't sufficient. So in order for everything to circulate in an economy, what we need is a middleman. We need a medium of exchange. Now, that medium of exchange could be something that already exists in the economy. We could make fish the middleman. We could make coins the middleman. We could make shells the middleman. But what you find, brothers and sisters, when you look at history, that three things were needed for something to act as a medium of exchange for people. The first thing is the medium of exchange needs to be widely available and acceptable. There's no point in having something that's a medium that isn't available to everybody. It needs to be available for everybody, and it needs to be acceptable by everybody as well. The last thing I want is I go to a Starbucks and they refuse to accept my medium of exchange. What we also need, this middleman, it needs to be a unit of account. It needs to be able to measure things. So I want to know how much of value is my item relative to yours. So it needs to be the medium needs to be measurable. So I can measure different goods. So that's too expensive, that's too cheap. That's because we're using a unit of measurement. And the final is, whatever we use as a middleman, we need some sort of store of value. And what that means is we want the amount we can purchase to hold over a period of time. If the amount I can buy with a particular item goes up and down, that creates a big problem for me. So these three things I mentioned, the medium of exchange, unit of account, store of value, these are generally the criteria that's applied upon money. So what that means, brothers and sisters, sorry, got a bit ahead there. What that means is that money is actually the lubricant that allows goods and services to circulate in the economy. Without money, we'll have to do barter. And in the modern economy, and even in the past, this became very, very impractical. What this also means, brothers and sisters, is if you increase or decrease the amount of money in an economy, it will have a big impact on the wider economy. And I want to come back to this point, inshallah, about if you impact the amount of money, the effect it has on the wider economy. So that's the reason why we need money. So what is the history of money? And what you find, brothers and sisters, is we started off, as I mentioned, with barter. Literally, you'd exchange biscuits for beans, metal parts for wood, wood for fish. And as I mentioned, that became very problematic over time. So what you find very quickly, brothers and sisters, gold and silver coins, or gold and silver as bullion, that became money. And the reason why this became money is because throughout human history, humans have placed a value on gold and silver. Gold and silver was considered very valuable. It was considered to have intrinsic value. So people were prepared to accept as payment gold and silver of a certain weight. So what you find, I think, at least for 3,000, 4,000 years, gold and silver has been money. In fact, up until at least the modern age, the 1970s, gold and silver, and mainly gold and silver, were actually money. So you find the Romans, they adopted the Roman coins, and every land that they conquered, they made their currency the currency of that country. So they had the Herculean dinar, and it was of a specific shape and a certain weight. So it wasn't people accepting money based on the number of coins, they accepted gold and silver in the form of coins based on the weight. And you find this similar with the Persians. The Persians adopted silver as a basis of their currency. And the Persian Empire has a history of a couple of thousand years. The Romans were around for at least 2,000 years. So what you find is prior to Islam in Arabia, the Arabs will return from Al-Sham and they will return from Persia, and they effectively use the Persian and Roman coins within Arabia. So you find the weight of these coins in gold, in silver, is how they used to trade with each other. So what you find is the Prophet ﷺ, he continued with this practice, as did Abu Bakr as-Siddiq and Umar Khattab. So they just used the Roman and the Persian coins by their weight rather than by their design and their coinage. So in the 20th year of Hijrah, so this is the 8th year of Umar Khattab's Khilafah, Umar Radwan, he coined new dirhams, but he still used the Persian coins. So what you find, the Persian faces and the Persian terminology was still on there, but what he did is he added some Arabic letters on them. So in some cases he would add in the name of Allah, and in other cases he would add in the name of Allah, my Lord. So that was the first time where the Arabian region started using coins with some of their own descriptions on it. So what you find, Muslims continued using dinars from the Roman Empire, and they continued using dirhams from Persia. And what you find over time was these coins had both Roman and Persian inscription on them. And then eventually you even had Arabic inscription on them. And then where things really changed was in the 77th year of Hijrah. And this is where Abdul Malik, he took the coins of the Roman and the Persian, and I think they melted them, and then they put them into shape again, and they put Islamic inscriptions on them. So this is where you could say in the 77th year, we had our own currency with our own inscriptions on there and our own designs on there as well. So on the next image, I'll show you, inshallah, how we think they looked. So really, after Abdul Malik, the Muslims had their own dirhams and their own dinars. It was of a particular style, and their currency was distinct in terms of its look and its style compared to the Persian and the Romans. So although the gold was the same, the weight was similar, how it looked was different. So this was you could argue, the Khilafah's currency. And this really continued in the Arabian lands. And what you find throughout the world, in some form or shape, gold and silver was still used, really up until the modern age. So you find with the rise of Europe, with the rise of colonialism, they had a bit of a problem, because if you want to go to war, you need money. And money was gold and silver, so you had to find gold and silver. So you could go to the rich aristocracy, and most of them never really wanted to go to war. So as a king, you always had quite a bit of a challenge. How do you go to war? How do you raise money when these people don't? So what a lot of the monarchies started doing in Europe is they just started printing money. What they started doing was they started to issue notes where store your gold with me, and they would give them a receipt, a promissory note, we call it. And these promissory notes is what became the notes and coins that we have today. So for the first time in history, what we had was representative money. Up until this point, people used gold, silver, or they used barter. Now what you had, we're still using gold and silver, but we're issuing paper money backed by gold and silver. And obviously, I'm sure you guys all know, a lot of the monarchs, they would obviously have more notes out there than physical gold and silver. And this really came to a head after World War II. A year before World War II ended, America gathered all the world's, as many nations as it could at Bretton Woods in America. And what America came up with was the Bretton Woods system. This was a system where, firstly, America possessed most of the world's gold at the time. Because when America was giving loans to Europe to fight the war, America didn't want the loans in their currency or European currency because he knew it would be worthless after the war. So what they did is they requested it in gold. So when World War II was coming to an end, America had most of the world's gold. So America imposed a system on the world where $35 is 1 ounce of gold, and you can redeem your gold if you want, or you can use the American currency, the dollar. And that's the system we really have until now. In the 1970s, America was printing way more notes than there was gold and silver because of the Vietnam War. And then I think in 1973, Richard Nixon temporarily suspended exchanging gold into the dollar, and that basically became permanent. And it's where we are today. So really from the 70s onwards, we have paper notes that are not backed by anything, and they have to be accepted as payment because legislation and the government enforces it. So if you go to a shop and you say, I want to use the dollar, and the shopkeeper says no, you can take legal action against him. You have to accept payment in your local currency, even though the currency is backed by absolutely nothing. So 2 more developments that are happening now. You've seen the development of cryptocurrency. So this is really, it's not actually that different from fiat currency, which is the system where you have banknotes that are backed by nothing. All cryptocurrency is, it's the same system in effect where you have nothing backed by it. But the only difference here is firstly, the currency is completely digital. So it exists online, it's an algorithm. And secondly, with cryptocurrency, the aim is it's not controlled by the banking system or the banking industry, it's decentralized. And they're the 2 main differences, really. If you look at the normal currencies, they're managed by central banks in every country. They're managed by your local banks. They create money. That's how you put deposits in. What cryptocurrency was trying to do was decentralize that system. And that's still going on at the moment. So Bitcoin obviously is one of them. In order to fight back against this, what you've now got is CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. So these are central banks who want to digitalize money completely. So that means we have a completely cashless society. Your money is an algorithm which is managed by the central bank. So that's where we are at the moment. And we can talk about more of this, inshallah, in the Q&A, if anyone's got any questions on it. So that, brothers and sisters, is a history of money. It's a bit of a high level. There's obviously a lot more details, but a generic level. We went from barter to gold and silver, from gold and silver to representative money to fiat, and then from now we're going towards digital, and then we're going towards centralized money, which is central bank digital currencies. Okay, so what does Islam say about money? Well, Islam, it says a couple of things. Well, firstly, Islam has prohibited the hoarding of gold and silver. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, and those who hoard gold and silver and do not spend them in the way of Allah, let them know there is a severe punishment is awaiting them. So that's Surah Al-Tawbah. So gold and silver in their capacity as money, and money is important, the hoarding has been prohibited. And so if you think about this, if you hoard money, gold and silver, then you're hoarding the means of exchange in a society. So there's a lot of hikmah to this particular ayah. Then there's some Islamic rules that were specifically fixed to gold. So if you look at blood money, if you look at the threshold for many of the punishments in Islam, such as for theft, cutting the hand of the thief, it's been linked to a certain amount of gold. And because these were linked to gold, what the scholars have always understood is gold and silver was money, and that's why many issues in Islam have been linked to gold and silver. The Prophet ﷺ, he approved the use of gold and silver. The Sahaba were all using gold and silver. Gold and silver existed before Islam, and the Prophet approved of it. The Prophet used gold and silver himself to exchange when he would pay for goods and services. So the action of the Prophet are also an indicator that this is something that's halal for us. And there's a general principle in Islam that the actions, sayings, and the consent of the Prophet ﷺ is a sunnah. So if something's going on, is widely known, and the Prophet remains silent, that's the Prophet's approval. So that's the third evidence. And the fourth one is that zakat and the nisab rate were decreed in gold and silver. Yeah, so these are decreed in gold and silver. So all of these, when you put them together, what this tells us is Islam sees the medium of exchange, the unit of account, as gold and silver. So gold and silver are money, whether it's representative money backed by gold or gold and silver directly. These are what we consider money in Islam. Okay, so I have a question for you. What is the money financial system today in the world? Obviously, that's the Islamic view. And what you find, brothers and sisters, is the modern money system we have is being completely privatized. Many people assume that it's the government that prints and controls money. Many people assume that the money that we have in banks, they get money in deposits and then the money is lent out to the people. Many people believe we have a fractional reserve banking system. So this is where for every £10 you put in your bank, the bank then loans out £20. All of these are actually incorrect. Today, what you find is money actually isn't created by the government. It's created by the banks and the central bank. And it's got nothing to do with deposits. They print money at will. Money, brothers, is literally made out of thin air. That's why you find, brothers and sisters, the Federal Reserve, the central bank in the US, the Bank of England, the European Central Bank, they're all private companies. They're actually all private companies. They're actually not government departments anymore. The last of these was the Bank of England. It was privatized in 1997. So printing money isn't actually, that's why the government has to borrow money. It takes loans from the central bank. It has to repay these loans. The government issue debt in the form of bonds. What you find in most countries in the world, I mean, apart from maybe China, all the other countries in the world, money creation is the job of the central bank and the financial industry. It's not actually in government hands. And that's why you'd be surprised, brothers and sisters, that 97% of money today is in the form of loans, which are created by commercial banks. Only 3% is the notes and coins and other things. 97% of money in an economy is the loans commercial banks give out. So what that means, brothers and sisters, is the money you have in your pocket, the money you have in your account, in origin is somebody else's loan. That's a scenario that we actually have today. So for capitalism, for the West, as far as they're concerned, money is a private endeavor. The government doesn't actually deal with this. It's a private endeavor. So, you know, in UK, for example, I think 60-70% of banks, well, 50-60% of the financial sector is in the hands of 5 banks. The 5 banks actually determine how much money there should be in the economy, how much money should be lent to people. They basically drive the economy. And it actually gets worse. I think if you go to the US, I think 90% is in the hand of 3 or 4 banks in total. You've got lots of smaller banks that are owned by the larger ones. So for them, money is no different to selling TVs or apples or fighter jets. These are goods that you can buy and sell. So the fact that money is a lubricant that makes the economy circulate doesn't matter to them. As far as they're concerned, it's a private endeavor. Okay, now there's 4 things I think we just need to look at, which I think gives you a good insight into the financial system that we have in the world. As I mentioned, brothers and sisters, debt is an industry. Debt is a product that you can buy and sell. That's how they view it. So you have financial markets where this actually happens. So in 2008, brothers and sisters, there was an economic crisis where the banks had lent out so much money that they believed most of that money would not be repaid. So they needed a bailout by the governments, which is what they got. So all of this is possible because they treat debt as no different to buying fruit and vegetables. It is just an intangible product. So that's important, brothers, in order to understand the industry. Then you've got the currency markets. I think $5 trillion is exchanged every day in currency. And the important thing here, brothers, is only 95% of this exchange, only 5% of this is for physical currency. So only 5% of 5 trillion is exchanged with people who need the currency. What that means is 95% is purely for speculation. 95% of 5 trillion changes hands because people are trying to make profit from the change in the currency. So if you think about it, if you're trying to buy oil from abroad, if you're trying to buy international commodities, the exchange rate isn't determined by how many people physically need it. It's determined by currency markets who are only interested in buying and selling to make sure they make a profit with the price difference. So the currency markets are very important. Very important, 5 trillion. We're all affected by it. If you're traveling abroad, if you need to buy from abroad, then you need the currency. If you import export, you need the currency. But the actual rate isn't determined by us buying and selling, it's determined by the speculation that's going on. The fourth industry you need to be aware of is the futures market. Now, both debt and both currency exchange, it takes place live. You want a loan, I'll give you the loan, it's live. You want a currency, I'll buy it and I'll sell it to you. Futures is a different market. Futures is a market where we promise to buy and sell at a future date. So I'm selling you something today and I don't even possess it today. And I'm hoping that the price we agreed, the price of the item will fall below that. And so then I will sell it to you slightly higher. And this market, brothers and sisters, it's about $300 to $400 trillion. Yeah, again, it's all speculation, casino. And the final one is shares, brothers and sisters. Historically, shares are part ownership in a company. So the shares represented what was going on in the company. But what you find today, brothers and sisters, shares have got nothing to do with companies. People buy shares in order to sell them at a higher price and make a profit. They are not interested in does the company make a profit and I get a share of the profit. They want to buy the shares at $1 and they want the price to go up and they want to sell it at $5 so they make a profit. They're not interested in what's going on with the company. So the debt markets, the currency exchange markets, the futures markets, and the stock markets, these are the key markets in the West in capitalism. And all of these are based on speculation. And the reason why they're based on speculation is because they've commodified debt. Debt is just another commodity that you buy and sell. So this is very important, inshallah, because again, there's a lot more detail to all of this. I'm sure we can discuss it, inshallah, in the Q&A. So in this slide, brothers and sisters, how on earth did Islamic finance come about? If finance in the West is all based on interest, it's all based on speculation, it's all based on commodifying it, how on earth do we have the term Islamic finance? And again, what you've got is because finance is such a big industry, the West and the banks we got, they wanted to get a share of the Islamic or the Sharia compliant finance. So what you find over the last 20 years, they've managed to make a number of products that are apparently compliant with Sharia, and they want to make a profit from it. And, you know, from my experience, brothers and sisters, most of these products and most of the companies that made them, they have to do intellectual gymnastics to make them halal. Because in normal finance, there's no rules and regulations. They can make debt out of anything. They can create a contract which is based on something in the future. In Islam, you can't really do that. And in fact, in Islam, we don't actually view money as an industry. Money is not an industry. Finance is not an industry. You can buy and sell. You can give loans to each other, but there's no riba involved. So there's no riba involved. Why would you get into that industry? Because you're not going to make a profit. So what they've come up with is two categories of products. So you've got the first one, which is the musharaka mudaraba, and this is really profit and loss. And you know, this is really a type of company. It's where one person puts the money in and the other one works with it, or one person puts the assets in and somebody else works with it and they share the profit. So what you find is a lot of products out there are some variation of this. Then you've got a number of products, brothers and sisters, which are really just asset-backed. So what you find is they're lending you money so you can make use of an asset. You've got markup, which is just selling at a profit. You've got leasing, which is ajara. So in the UK, we've got a couple of mortgage products here, where it's a combination of leasing and profit and share, right? And it's been very difficult for them actually to make this Sharia compliant because of the gymnastics that you have to do to go about it. So we could talk about this more, inshallah, in the Q&A session. I'm sure there's plenty of questions on this, but at a very basic level, these are really the two types of products, really two categories, and really everything else is very just a variation of this, inshallah.